history, we can point to men and women who changed the way we think and the way we live.
In 1962, Eunice Kennedy-Shriver launched Special Olympics from her own backyard, inviting kids with intellectual disabilities to test their sporting talents.
Today, her son Tim drives the organisation.
But he hasn't simply taken over from his mother. He's calling on world leaders to change the way we all engage with people with intellectual disabilities.
People with intellectual disabilities have dreams. We want to be included. We want to be part of the community. One of us, and not one among us.
The future of our movement is to be the world's greatest movement promoting human acceptance and universal human value that the world's ever seen.
What does that mean? That means I'm accepted in a group. It means that people respect me. They don't ignore me. They have expectations, and they believe in me. It means that I am empowered to contribute.
I think coming to Athens is all about thinking about Plato and thinking about Aristotle. And what they all had, it seems to me, in common is that they all believed that there was some circle of human participation, that there was these great ideas in humanity. They all said we have to build republics and we have to do it ethically and we have to do it with a hero's determination to seek great goals. None of them saw our athletes as belonging. None of them saw a person with Down syndrome as being a rightful leader.
It was hard for me to accept the fact that I have Down syndrome, but it became easier when I joined Special Olympics and discovered that I was not alone.
Our athletes represent a challenge to intolerance. They represent a challenge to prejudice, to fear, to human misunderstanding. They are the world's and history's most deeply wounded victims of prejudice.
There may be obstacles, but they can be overcome with open hearts and changing minds.
Dr. Tim Shriver, chairman of the Special Olympics movement, has spoken of big dreams to rally the world, to support people who live with intellectual disability, to bring tolerance and unity. In 2011, at the Special Olympics World Games in Athens, the organisation welcomed more than 7,500 athletes from 180 countries. And as the Games were opened, some of the world's most powerful leaders walked beside the athletes. It was the most significant gathering in support of people with intellectual disabilities that the world has ever seen. The beginning of what Special Olympics is calling a revolution. It's the legacy of the late Eunice Kennedy-Shriver.
I grew up in a very high-powered family, some would say. A very wealthy family, some would say. It was easy to think that what mattered was those things, power and wealth and access to resources. It was easy to believe as a kid that those kinds of things were the most important thing you could have. Our athletes have challenged me to be reminded that they are not, that what matters is what's inside you.
David Egan is a global messenger in his home state of Virginia.
We want to be useful members of our society because we want to show our abilities.
He's one of hundreds of people who've been trained and empowered through the Athlete Leadership Program, and who now speak on behalf of others who live with an intellectual disability. Throughout the Games, David and other global messengers challenged people's perception of disability, demanding a fundamental change in the way society treats people.
I want to welcome you to this extraordinary array of talent which has come from all over the world to lend their gifts that come from the heart in order to remind us that if we play more unified, if we dance and celebrate and sing more unified, we might someday learn how to take those lessons into learning how to live unified.
The World Games was the largest international sporting event of 2011. 22 sports in all. While Eunice Shriver instigated Special Olympics, son Tim passionately drives the organisation. The Athlete Global Messengers, all of whom have an intellectual disability, are increasingly involved across all areas of the organisation.
I'm part of the evaluation team, so what we do is there's 5 of us, and we're 5 different people from around the world, and I'm the athlete representative. And what we do is we go around and we evaluate the entire World Games.
We're off to one of the events for tennis. Unity is Special Olympic athletes playing with regular athletes. People with non-disabilities learn more about the athletes that do have disabilities, and so they're able to understand a little bit more of, with people with a disability, what they can do.
A person with an intellectual disability, in our case, a person with an intellectual difference, has gifts to bring to every conversation, to every discussion, to every goal setting, if you will.
Now that we have more Special Olympics athletes out here, I'm going to go over and say hello.
We believe very much in the diversity of gifts. There are guesses from scientists that say there are 2,000 or 3,000 forms of intellectual difference. As long as we're opening the circle of participation in everything we do, whether it's sitting down to debrief how well did such and such an event run, or how well did we do in our fundraising, or how well did we do in our communications, or how well was volleyball managed, all those conversations. We need lots of points of input in order to get a point of consensus on what to do next.
Diversity is important because it teaches acceptance in a way. If people look at it correctly and with an open-minded view and an accepting view, it teaches us that we're all different in our own way.
Ben's at the open water swimming.
Mostly just observe the spectator area, the athlete area, to see whether it was safe.
How strong these athletes are. After 25 minutes of swimming, no walls coming in this fast.
It was the athletes themselves who insisted this be introduced as a sport at these games.
Here he comes, Andrew. He's going to be standing up in a couple of minutes. 22 minutes, and Andrew is our first ever Special Olympic athlete gold medalist in the 1,500-meter swim.
There are more than 3.7 million athletes signed up to Special Olympics. Almost 50,000 events are held every year. But Tim's mother dreamed of a much greater impact.
Let's give him a hand. Look at this fight.
You know, it's hard to know with my mother. She was so tough, and she was so determined. I think in some ways, when I've talked to her, she was surprised, and her eyes would roll, and she'd go, wow. You know, she'd hear a story of a new program in a war-torn country, or she'd hear stories of a doctor who had gone into a war zone to do a medical screening for our athletes, and her eyes would sort of dance with amazement. And then other times I'd say, well, we're achieving this or that, and she'd look at me with those steely eyes and say that, you know, that's not enough. You know this, we can do better than that. So I don't know. She said in Chicago in 1968 we should have 1 million athletes. I asked her about that, and she said, well, it was just a placeholder.
India is one of the largest strategic partners of Special Olympics. There are now more than 1 million athletes in the program. Young people who were previously excluded in so many ways.
The numbers, that still remains our biggest. If there are 200-300 million people with an intellectual difference in the world, to brag about 3.7 million is a joke. Until we have the critical mass of participation and engagement in our community that would count us in the tens of millions, we're not going to be a serious force in the world. We're going to be an occasional message maker.
Taylor Doyle is an Australian long jumper and 100-metre sprinter.
All you got to do is just hit that board and then just run really fast and jump.
Like every athlete here, she's trained long and hard for these games. Yet Special Olympics believe many of these athletes could achieve much more if sporting organisations assisted with coaching expertise. Special Olympics has a clear strategic plan to drive a fundamental change in society. Here in Athens, UNICEF is signing an agreement to partner Special Olympics to advocate for healthcare, education, recreational sports and employment policies that will benefit children with intellectual disabilities.
We are here for a very important day, for a very important cause, initiative.
Special Olympics is rebellion against exclusion, indignity, discrimination, prejudice, and social cruelty. And Special Olympics thus gives children with disabilities an equal chance to make the most of their lives. Chance to play in the same playgrounds as other children, learn in the same classrooms, to live and grow in the same communities, and to become productive members of society. But around the world, children with disabilities cannot do so. They're excluded, marginalized, stigmatized, shunned. Their needs are too often unmet, their dreams are too often unrealized, and their potential is too often unfulfilled. Children with disabilities are more likely to be malnourished. That's why the Healthy Athletes is such a great program. They're less likely to receive medical care. They're at higher risk of abandonment and abuse. Of all children, they are most likely to be left out of school. Millions are needlessly institutionalized, and as adults, they are more likely to live in poverty, and that is damn wrong.
We're here because we need to imagine a different future. We need to imagine a future where every child, where the circle of belonging and inclusion is universal. But Special Olympics has never done well with agreements, has never done well with paper. We've done really well with executing. And so today our commitment is, Mr. Director, that we will sign an agreement, but we will sign an agreement with a voracious and relentless determination to make action out of the agreement. And we will have no satisfaction if in 1 year, or 2 years, or 3 years, we put this agreement on our walls and have nothing to show for it.
This is on behalf of children with intellectual disabilities throughout the world.
This one event symbolised the shift in global views and the power of Special Olympics to drive change.
It takes one strong leader to lead the nation, to lead the community, to lead the group, to lead the teams. It takes one voice to speak out loud, not just to speak, but they have to be loud and they have to be heard. And that word will encourage us to make a strong differences, especially for some of those kids, as we call it, special kids, that have been rejected because of their intellectual disability.
Dikembe Mutombo is one of the greatest NBA basketball stars of all time and a board member of Special Olympics. He's just one of many sporting celebrities who lend their name to the movement. World champion skaters Apollo Ono and Michelle Kwan, track hero Edwin Moses, and Olympic gymnast Nadia Comaneci.
Certainly since I've been a part of the Special Olympics movement, you know, on a full-time basis, I felt the momentum go from a sense in which we were doing something good that we had to continue to a sense in which we were doing something revolutionary that we had to exponentially grow. I go and I listen to parents, I listen to athletes, I listen to volunteers. They're all talking the same language. They're talking a language of revolution. They're talking a language of changing others. They're talking a language of growth. They're not doing it because it's in a strategic plan. They're not doing it because they got a memo. They're doing it because they feel it.
Tim Shriver and his late mother secured the support of some of the most powerful heavyweights of business to partner Special Olympics.
Tim is strong. Tim have done it and continue to do it and is willing to do it again and again all over around the world.
Oh, nice shot!
Here at the tennis, the global CEO of Coca-Cola, Mutombo, is hanging out with the athletes. Despite running a massive global organization, he sits on the board of Special Olympics.
It's a new and better experience for me when I'm playing with athletes, whether it's hockey or basketball or tennis like today, and different games, different years, different towns, different cities. And it's just one of incredible camaraderie. It's not about just the sport, it's about incredible camaraderie, incredible amount of unity, of friendship, of bonding.
I'm glad I didn't play against you. I'm glad I didn't play against you.
When I was at the beginning of my career with the Coca-Cola company and Coca-Cola system, I have, in every country, every region, when I was on the ground, implementing marketing programs for our company, I supported Special Olympics.
I think, you know, we've expanded our business into about 32 markets around the world, and I've been trying to say to all our new managers, you know, if we go into a country, we say, hey, we got to, first of all, the first thing sponsorship we do is let's adopt the Special Olympics team here. So if you take El Salvador, Panama, Honduras, you know, any of these countries, and now in the Pacific.
Special Olympics is valuable to us because it all comes back to P&G's purpose. You know, our purpose is to improve the lives of consumers, and we want to do that by reaching more consumers in more parts of the world more completely. So in that sense, there's kind of a commercial reason to being there, but it takes you to a higher order. It takes you to the idea of how do we improve the lives of consumers.
I am a fan. I'm so lock, stock, barrel. I am. I believe in this. I believe. I've seen what it's done for the kids. I've seen what it's done for myself. I've seen, you know, like the volunteer network. Everyone involved in this group, I've never met such a positive group of people.
When we went to the Pacific in 2006, I said to our new CEO, Christian, I said, Christian, what about the Special Olympics? We got to sponsor them. And he says, what are you talking about? And then he Googled, and then he came back and he says, oh yeah, I kind of half understand it. And then under his own initiative and the team's initiative, they had these games one Saturday. And they showed the board a video about a month later, and everybody was crying.
If I was to contrast it to do different sponsorships, that would be the major takeout, is that, you know, in rugby when we're doing well and the sponsors, like, you know, we're all jumping up and down, high-fiving. When a team doesn't do so well, you know, with Special Olympics, like, we're high-fiving when we're coming last. It doesn't matter. It's insignificant to the, you know, the greater cause.
These are the young Samoan athletes Digicel supported.
There is a big group of people in Samoan society whose needs are underserved, that are being kept at home and not being given these opportunities to actually grow.
By the time the Samoan team left their tiny country, people lined the roads in a display of support.
When I first met these kids months ago, I sensed that there is a lack of confidence in them, but I've seen this transformation, you know, this human transformation.
Samoa is typical of many developing nations. People with disabilities haven't been a priority. They've tended to be isolated, leading lives with few opportunities.
In the case of Samoa, you know, we kind of led the way because the government didn't get it at the first. You know, at the first step, they didn't understand what we were talking about. And then they all came on board, and all the different arms of the government came on board, and they recognized, hey, This is going to do so much for people. It's going to liberate people. It's going to use sport as a catalyst to change all opinions in Samoa.
Now, I dare to dream about changing the way people think of us, changing the perceptions, opening doors for people with disabilities to shine, and overcome the disabilities. Not only on the court, but in the workplace and at all levels of our society.
Throughout the Games, there were high-level strategic conversations. And at every table, athletes themselves debating with representatives of UNICEF and the United Nations. This is the woman that Tim Shriver says secured his respect for the men and women of Special Olympics.
No, it wasn't about a dollar for me. In 1966, I started running. I still run today. I have more miles on my feet than some of you have on your cars. But life was different for me. It was an angry life. And I'm going to tell you straight up, I'm going to tell you the truth. If it wasn't for sport, I would probably be in prison now. I was a very, very angry child. I didn't know how to cope because people didn't accept me. But I remember 1970, I became a part of Special Olympics.
Loretta Claiborne had a very big influence on me. When I had young children, she came and would visit with us. And I can remember taking her to talk to my daughter's second grade class. And I can remember her being in front of those little second graders saying, you know, when I was in your grade, people used to call me a retard. And people used to make fun of me. And people used to beat me up and exclude me. And I was watching my daughter in that classroom and listening to her. And at some level, I think maybe as a father, it hit me that she had suffered so much from simple things, name calling, being pushed aside, you know, not being in the clique. And yet she'd grown up to be this extraordinary human being. She was so full of wisdom. She was so smart, so stable, so grounded.
And I look at the Olympics, the people who compete for money. I look at the Olympics, it's always the very best. But Baron de Coubertin said the race isn't always to the swiftest, it's to those who take part. And I have my turn to take part, and many of our athletes. But there's a little problem with us taking part. To expand our games, to expand our roles as athletes, to be our best, we need some help. We need some support. We need some help with coaching.
It's the second major conference of the Games. This time, sports federations are committing to support Special Olympics.
In our movement, we begin with the idea that we have a development goal, we have a social goal. Many sport organizations begin with a sport goal. Our organization began with a social goal.
There's an evolution within the sports movement. Increasingly, they're having to consider the society within which they operate. The sports themselves, the events, they cost millions and even billions for the countries who host them. We can't just operate these events without thinking of the communities they operate in. So it's a real privilege that increasingly now we have the signing of a proclamation between the Softball Federation, Tenpin Bowling Federation. It's just the start of where we see things are going. But the greatest thing is really the technical expertise, and I think that's one where we will be beginning, is bringing in those coaches, so you get the top quality coaches, you get all those things that perhaps Special Olympics doesn't have yet, but we really truly hope that we can work together in the future. It's a privilege to work with you.
We are one of those organizations, as Tim mentioned, which started with sporting goals, and then at some point in time, 101 years after the creation of our organization back in 2005, we embraced the concept of social change and social responsibility. And it was kicked off by the fact that the United Nations made a call in 2005, the International Year of Sports and Physical Education, which we followed through, and we decided to create not only and define a strategy for social responsibility and embrace the concept of football, in our case, being a worthy tool for social development.
Personally, this inspires me. 3 years ago when I was
in the US and Idaho. And we must bring this message out of throughout the world.
This is the most distinguished gathering of sport organizations in support of Special Olympics in our history, right on this stage. We have never, in the past, commanded, if you will, the attention or been understood or been accepted or been welcomed fully by the international governing bodies of sport in the world, by the United Nations and its leaders in the world, by icons like the glorious community of athletes around the world, all together.
The organization has a real chance now to actually go like a catapult, because so much has been done now in building, you know, the whole infrastructure and getting more and more teams to come and celebrate. But, you know, I think there's a lot more work to be done, and I'm sure, you know, in the next 5 years, you know, the Special Olympics worldwide organization will just accelerate.
That the gift of the human spirit knows no bound. It is not about the mind. It is not about the words one speaks. It's not about the logos, if you will, even. It's about the spirit. And we are here to play in the home of the Olympic movement, in the home of the democratic movement, with a very powerful intention to lead a revolution that even they might not have imagined.
3 million athletes in 175 countries, that's some achievement.
And we're part of it. Next month's Special Olympics Trans-Tasman tournament is hosted by Wellington.
Your tyres are completely flat.
Yeah.
In Samoa, people with disabilities are in dire need of even the most basic equipment. Some Rotarians from Ashburton thought they could make a difference.
I too have probably been a bit unaware of the underlying poverty in Pacific Islands.
I was missing all things of my life to enjoy my friends.
Tickets are now on sale for the 2011 Attitude Awards. This televised black tie event was created as a way to recognise and celebrate the achievements of people living with a disability. For more information about the awards and how to attend the fantastic night, visit our website, attitudepictures.com. Attitude was made with funding from New Zealand On Air.